Chris, what is our first main topic today?
Our first topic comes from Spencer. Hello there, John and crew. With the success of Avatar: The Way of Water at the box office, I couldn't help but wonder what the longevity of the franchise will look like since the sequels are being made and released more frequently than the first two. Similarly, the Star Wars sequel trilogy was massively successful upon The Force Awakens release, but each sequel earned less than its predecessor. Do you think the Avatar films will follow a similar pattern? Any comments on quality? Thank you and have a wonderful day.
All right, thanks a lot for saying that in, Spencer. So, yeah, we had to wait, 13 years? We had to wait 13 years to go from Avatar 1 to Avatar 2. And didn't seem to take any of the momentum out of it because the movie right now is sitting at like $1.93 billion. It's going to probably cross the $2 billion mark. We'll see. Probably going to climb into the top 5 of all time. We'll see. But now we're moving into an era where the next Avatar film, if it doesn't get bumped and delayed, is supposed to come out in 2 years, December 2024. Will that affect it? Like, will Avatar coming out more frequently have a negative effect? He asks, Spencer's asking, because we saw Star Wars do that, right? We had to wait a long time for Star Wars to come out. Then once we did start coming out every other year, it started to go back. Well, let's go over to the classroom for a second, take a look at this. So when the first Star Wars, the new Star Wars came out, Force Awakens, made $2.07 billion the box. One of only 6 films, I think right now 5. We're going to have 6 here soon. Films in history to make $2 billion. By the way, Force Awakens is still the all-time record holder for the biggest domestic box office. No other film has ever made as much money in the States as The Force Awakens does, and I don't know that anything's ever going to catch it. And it had a $247 million opening. All right. Now, what's interesting, as we then move on to The Last Jedi, we see some decline, but in one bigger area than another. So The Last Jedi ended up making $1.3 billion, a $700 million dip from the first one. Now, granted, most filmmakers in the world would sell their own mothers to have a film that makes $1.3 billion at the box office. What's really funny about it, though, is that when you look at its opening weekend numbers, it's pretty similar to the opening weekend number of The Force Awakens. So $27 million difference, right? So Force Awakens made $247. The Last Jedi made $220. Not that big of a difference. Certainly not as big of a difference that you'd think it would ultimately equate to a $700 million difference at its final box office. Now that brings us then to the third film, which we see more decline, but even more so in its opening weekend, because when The Rise of Skywalker came out, it made a little bit less than The Last Jedi at 1.07. So about, $200 million difference, a lot less of a fall than the $700 million difference.
Yeah.
But look at its opening weekend number. Had a $43 million drop in its opening number just from The Last Jedi to this one. Now, what does this have to do with Avatar? So here's what I think it is. The question Spencer's asking is, will the fact now that we're going into a pattern of every 2 years, will we see a decline in Avatar's returns as we did with Star Wars, which followed a similar pattern of release, right? But if you look at these numbers, I don't think the pattern of release had anything to do with the declining numbers of Star Wars. It had to do with the decline in quality.
Yep.
Because The Force Awakens, I still contend, I'll argue anybody. The Force Awakens is a fantastic film. I love it. Made $2 billion. People went back to see it again and again and again and again. So then comes The Last Jedi. And look at the opening numbers. They're comparable to The Force Awakens. What wasn't comparable was the quality. Now, I like The Last Jedi, but I have some very well-documented problems with the film. And a lot of people did. And so instead of getting people going back again and again and again and again, it didn't happen. You see that in a $700 million drop. Well, when you've got a movie that some people don't like, that's going to affect your opening weekend of the next film. So we go to The Rise of Skywalker. That movie was a bloody mess. All due respect to anybody who liked it. If you like The Rise of Skywalker, that's awesome. I celebrate that. I hated that movie. But you could see now with a really significant drop in the opening weekend box office, and I think that had to do with the divisive nature of The Last Jedi. And of course, The Rise of Skywalker ended up making a cool $1 billion less than the first film in the new franchise.
And
of
the same director.
And the same director. Now, again, we cannot ignore the fact that it was still a $1 billion film, which, again, most filmmakers and studios would sell their own mothers for to have that. But I think that's it. The point here is that I don't think it's a matter of the intervals of release. It's an interval of the declining quality. Don't bet against James. We can take down the classroom now. Don't bet against James Cameron. Just don't do it. If you haven't learned that lesson by now, go buy stocks in Blockbuster. I don't know what to tell you. If you haven't learned that lesson at this point.
Not financial advice.
And what we've got now is we've got Avatar: The Way of Water, which again, it's all subjective, but to me is a superior film in almost every aspect than the first Avatar. Now, am I saying that I think Avatar 3 will make $2 billion? Not necessarily, but I don't think we're going to get that diminishing returns in quality that's going to lead to a diminished result at the box office. So while it did happen with Star Wars, I don't expect to see it happen with Avatar. We want to thank a sponsor of this video, MasterClass. MasterClass offers classes on a wide variety of topics, all taught by world-class instructors at the very top of their fields. Each class is broken out into individual video lessons, usually around 10 minutes long. And MasterClass is completely accessible on your phone, the web, smart TV, and available via audio mode to listen to classes on the go. They have over 2,500 video lessons from over 180 of today's most brilliant minds. They're all available anytime, anywhere on iOS, Android, desktop, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, and Roku. Now, obviously around here on the John Campea Show, we love our movies, so why not learn filmmaking from Jodie Foster, or maybe directing from Ron Howard himself, or the great Neil Gaiman doing his masterclass on the art of storytelling. And you guys have heard me talk about my favorite masterclass, Business Strategy and Leadership by Big Papa Iger himself, Bob Iger, the new and returning CEO of Disney. Guys, I highly recommend that you check it out. This holiday, give the perfect gift of an annual Masterclass membership and get one free. Go to masterclass.com/Campea today. That's masterclass.com/Campea. Terms apply. Anyway, Rob, you're taking a look at this. A lot of numbers flying around, but what do you think?
Well, I will try and refrain from being mean about certain creators and what they've done to two franchises.
He made great Star Trek stuff.
But, no, he didn't. And look at the diminishing returns there. Similar to what happened if you look at Star Trek 09 and Star Trek Beyond, which he still produced, he didn't direct it, but still.
Still made more money than any of the older Star Trek movies.
But that's true, but they cost
Yes,
10
they-
times.
yes,
You know
they
what?
did.
He was great in Regarding Henry.
Yeah, he wrote that. But here's the thing about the Avatar films. Aside from the fact that they're both big franchises that have a space component to them, I don't think they're alike at all.
Not at all.
And I think that the thing about James Cameron is what James Cameron gives you is rousing entertainment in all of his movies. True Lies, action comedy, rousing. That movie's awesome. And at its core, again, romantic element, husband and wife trying to connect again.
He has a scene where Arnold Schwarzenegger is arguing with a horse, and he makes it work. It's so fun to watch.
And he puts skiing back. I mean, James Bond needs to ski. Please, people, put him back on skis. And they have that in True Lies. But you can't, James Cameron has a thing. His thing is to provide rousing entertainment that leaves you satisfied when you leave the theater. The Star Wars franchise is an abject lesson in not satisfying your audience. I mean, when you have three movies, and within the course of those three movies, the third one drops $1 billion. Now, to be fair, Force Awakens is an anomaly because Star Wars, everybody you brought the main characters back except Luke. You didn't put them together in a scene, but okay. Everybody wanted to see Star Wars, so
but that did make people go back 5, 6, 7 times. People liking the movie made them go back 5, 6, 7 times.
And they wanted Star Wars back. That's what they wanted. But you see the incredible disappointment in $1 billion difference between Force Awakens and Rise of Skywalker. That is not insignificant. That needs to be studied. If someone lost the studio $1 billion because there's no reason a Star Wars movie should have that. We should go back again and again and again. I've seen the original Star Wars 100 times, and I still don't get tired of it. I never want to see Rise of Skywalker again, and I own it. It's in the Skywalker box set I have in 4K. I will never put that disc ever again in my player, ever. I never.
Quick point of fact, though. Nobody lost Disney $1 billion because that movie made Disney a lot of money. I just wanted us to keep in perspective. As much as we hate that movie,
it's true.
We got to keep perspective. It still did what most movies don't do. It made $1 billion.
But the same writer-director also, there's $1 billion gap between his Star Wars movies. And I blame that person. It's his fault. And he's going to end up directing Star Trek 4, and he shouldn't, but whatever. But it's because James Cameron, he knows how to satisfy. That's the difference. And the Avatar films, he's been thinking about them. This is James Cameron's way of saving the world. You think he's going to make an Avatar movie that isn't great? He's incapable of doing that. Now, there might be things you can argue with, like, why is there no mention of unobtainium in Way of Water? Who cares? Who cares? How did they figure out that the goop in the whale's brains could, make people live forever? Who cares? I don't care. I mean, it doesn't make, I'll tell you something, it doesn't make any sense. Here's Avatar Way of Water. When did they discover this about the whales? Because it takes 6 years to go from Earth to Pandora. All right. Now, the humans come back a year. A year takes place in Way of Water. How did they figure out in that year to go whaling to get the goop out of the brain? And then they figured out it was going to extend the lifespan of humanity. They haven't Earth. They've never gotten back to Earth. It'd take another 6 years before they can save people. How do they know this? How do they figure it out, John?
Yeah, it does make a lot of sense.
Oh yeah, maybe I should watch it first.
Although that makes sense.
Anyway, Chris, what do you think about this? Do you think the Avatar franchise could be in line to have the same sort of decline over time that we saw what happened with the Star Wars? Or do you think that's a separate thing?
I mean, sure, it's possible, but it comes down to the quality of the scripts, right? It comes down to the storytelling, because that's one of the things with the Star Wars films is because they became very, very polarizing to a lot of people. I'm a Last Jedi apologist. I really enjoy that one. I know for a lot of people, y'all don't like that one. Some people out there loved Rise of Skywalker, and some people hated it, right? It really comes down to your own personal taste and how these things are done and if they're executed well. So if James Cameron keeps firing on all cylinders, yeah, these could be great, and we might not see a huge loss in between them. If people get bored by the concepts, if we run this into the ground, if things just become really redundant or really, really poorly told, then yeah, it's going to lose money. But it all comes down to that. I can't really predict the future of how these movies are going to come, so we have to wait to see how it goes.
Yeah. So the bottom line is I don't really think it has anything to do with the intervals of release.
It's not a direct correlation.
Yeah. So I think you're going to see Star Wars. Let's go over to me on the shot there, Jonathan. I don't think we're going to see that kind of have any impact there at all. Anyway, guys, question is for you. What do you think about that? Do you think we could see a decline in the Avatar popularity as we go as a result of it being released more frequently than it did before? Again, I don't think it's wise to be in the doubting James Cameron business, but whatever you guys think, jump down into the comment section below and let us know your